So I think in some ways, because we're a smaller court, there are some aspects and guardrails of normalcy that are still in place. But that's not to say that we haven't been impacted by what's going on the national level.
What are those impacts, those through lines from what we see playing out in headlines on the national level that are trickling into our community?
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing things like arrests at court. You're seeing things where, people have waited years for a court hearing and they appear for court and their case is dismissed and then they're put in some form of expedited or administrative removal process that circumvents normal due process, right? You're seeing the flyers and posters that say self-deport, and that visibly placed in the courtrooms, in the lobby. So I mean, some of that is going on. In terms of the numbers, I mean, we are seeing numbers and numbers, hundreds of cases that were administratively closed or were put on a slower path because they're going through the process. There's other pieces that are going on through USCIS that they are waiting for. And so, it makes from an administrative sense, some sense to say, well, we're not going to expedite this because we're waiting on another arm of the agency to do their job. Those cases are getting recalendared, right? And when you think about 53,000 cases in backlog in the Kansas City Immigration Court. Nationally, almost 4 million cases in backlog. This idea of flooding the courts even further doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But we are seeing that spill into the Kansas City area for sure.
Let me follow up on 2 points that you made there. You talked about cases that they dismissed, and then it moves into this expedited kind of process. For somebody who is unaware of how this even works, what does that mean?
So it would be like this. It would be like if you went to traffic court and you were there trying to get your traffic ticket resolved, you waited for your court date, you did all the things you were supposed to, you appear to court, and the judge says, we're going to dismiss your case. Now, in that moment, you're going to think, well, okay, great, right? I mean, I won, I prevailed, I did all the things. Now imagine that you walk out of court and law enforcement arrests you and now says, well, we're going to put you in this administrative process that says you can plead guilty and pay a fine, or we will find another way to deport you that doesn't give you your day in court, right? It logically is counter to what normal people think about. 1, when they think about courts. 2, when they think about due process. And 3, just overall how laws work in the United States. Like, these are not systems that, people think that you're going to get your case dismissed only to get rearrested, right?
So I have been told, and I remember when this happened, there was a period of 3 days, and you can correct me if it's longer than that, where ICE was showing up to immigration court and arresting people within that premises. What do you recall of that period of time? And to your knowledge, has it happened beyond that?
I don't think it has systematically occurred here beyond that. I think nationally there are still some courts that are struggling with that. But I think that's an attestament. Like I said, I think that's an attestament to some of the judges here who have said, look, we're not going to participate in this way because that's just not how we do things. And I think that those 3 days, it was overwhelming for everybody, right? And I think that, look, I'm of the opinion that most people enter into the system to try and do it the right way, right? Whether it's the prosecutor, whether it's the judge, I like to give them that benefit of the doubt, that no one goes into that kind of a profession saying, I'm going to violate my oath every day, right? But I think the amount of pressure that the administration is putting on some of these people to say, if you don't do it our way, we will fire you, I think that's extraordinary. And I think that that's something that, just from a human perspective, we've got to go, are they really just that evil, or are they really just having a human reaction? And then how do we correct that? I think that those are 2 open questions that we still don't really fully know. But I think, here, when it happened, I will tell you that it was short-lived. But those 3 days, it was traumatic for everybody. You had people who really, for that split second, thought things were better, things were okay. Didn't happen that way. And these are people who've been waiting a long time and who have been trying to do it the right way, right? You hear that in the media all the time. You hear that in every political speech out there, right? It becomes that soundbite to say, why don't they do it the right way? Why don't they do it the right way? Well, they were trying to do it the right way.
Playing devil's advocate to that point, when I observed the court hearings for several days, there's different groups that come in, those who are represented, those who are not represented, what the nature of their case was. And there were a lot of people who were EWI cases, EWI, I think is how you pronounce it, entry without inspection. Anybody can walk into these courts and observe this and say, well, here's the larger group that came in, entry without inspection. They didn't do it the right way. They just got flagged. And now they are showing up to, challenge, what the government is alleging, is my understanding. So what is your response to that? I mean, they're there in court trying to do it the right way, but the reason that they are, arguably, is because they didn't.
Well, I mean, I think the problem is that's a simplistic approach, right? And part of it is that when you look at, how long have we been talking about as a country the need for comprehensive immigration reform, right? When you think back to the last true amnesty was during Ronald Reagan's time. And when they did the amnesty back in Ronald Reagan's time, they set up a system that no one followed, right? What was Reagan's plan? Reagan said, I'm going to legalize whoever's here, and then set up the E-Verify system so that people who were unable to work, that they were going to go after employers and sanction employers for hiring undocumented workers. But unfortunately, the country is built on cheap labor. So what did not happen? They legalized this group of people, but then what didn't happen is that the law that was on the books was not enforced. And so again, part of what happens is that people will go where they can get a better life. No one leaves their home if they can be comfortable and safe and happy. They usually go looking for opportunities. And that's the bulk of who comes. So where you have a labor force that's willing to work and an employer section that's willing to hire, that's what's happening, right? And you have a system of laws that do not make it easy for any of those dots to connect.
Let's talk about that system. What are the pathways to, quote unquote, do it right for the people that say, why can't they just get in line?
One, there is no line. So I think, again, it's a great soundbite that has no substance behind it. It's not legally there. It's not factually there. There is no line, right? We don't have, I think it was George W. Bush who tried to advocate for a guest worker program. And there was, I think it was the Gang of Eight, where you had a bipartisan bill where people were trying to create this guest worker program. Because in essence, when you think about how do people immigrate to the United States? Family-based, employment-based, right? And then you have some of these humanitarian bases, asylum, those kinds of things that people are seeking protection. Okay. But when family-based lines when I say lines, but when the wait times are so long that it doesn't really, are you really going to be separated from your loved ones for 4, 5, 6, 10 years? No, right? And I'm talking about people who are not immediate relatives. Immediate relatives in the immigration context, and these are all words of art, right? And so you have a parent, a child, or a spouse of a U.S. citizen that is considered an immediate relative. Brothers and sisters aren't, right? Green card holders, their spouses aren't. Their children aren't. So it's not about the familiar relationship that most people would think about. It is about the legal definition of what does this mean. So in this context, what you have is that you have certain pathways, but to get to those pathways, you have to either have a family member, you either have to have an employer. Well, employers aren't willing to wait 10 years to have an employee. So what's easier? Somebody who's here, they know they can get a job, and you have an employer who's willing to hire them. There you are. The guest worker program was arguably set up to solve some of those issues. It never happened. The immigration system initially was under the Department of Labor, right? It was because people recognized that individuals were coming for work and opportunity. Currently, if you look at how poorly the laws are written, it's really a Band-Aid approach, and it's kind of driving what's going on in the courts, it's driving what's going on in society, because you have a system that's in place that really everybody knows, everybody agrees that they should wipe it clean and start over, right? But instead, it's almost like if you had a house that really needs to be torn down, but you're not tearing it down, and you keep trying to patchwork it to make it function. Eventually, that house is so dilapidated that you can call it a house, but it's not really a house. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing and why you're seeing some of these crises occur.